Being held hostage is when you, for example, you seize a person, or you hold a person or something as security for fulfillment of a condition, a request, a demand, a requirement, whatever it is you want. It's a form of bullying someone into submission while in captivity to try to force your agenda. Just wow to the House of Representatives, particularly to the Republican Party, who allowed TSA workers to suffer for days on end. Just wow. The people who voted for you, you held as hostages. Wow. And then you tried to blame it on the Democrats. Wow. Okay. I know. That's no way to start a show. So I'll start over and I will be right back. Well, hello, and welcome to In Your Ear Radio. I am your host, Latoya, so very happy to be with you on this beautiful Saturday. It's such a lovely day. Wow. Yeah, I guess last weekend was spring. I think we went into the second day of spring when I mentioned it last weekend. Wow. Yeah, I guess it makes sense that it's hot. It's in the 80s, knocking on the 90s, and we're getting heat wave notifications and things of the sort. I'm not complaining, except I don't feel like I really got to get into my boots fashion the way I wanted to get into it. And when Vegas gets hot, listen, you want to have on the least amount of things, at least have on breathable clothing. Let me go ahead and share this video with my group while you guys hop in. And I thank you for joining me today on In Your Ear Radio. Did I say that? I'm your host, Latoya. Very happy to be with you today. Let me go ahead and share this to my group. So In Your Ear Radio, so we can just go ahead and go here. So yeah, the weather is weathering. It is nice and warm. You can go out and wash your car and enjoy the vibe. Well, it's 83 degrees. All right, I got it. It's 83 degrees right now. I'm sure it feels more like 90 to a lot of people, especially if you're in your car. But anyway, shout out to all of you who are enjoying the lovely weather. I know it's nice here in Las Vegas. I hope wherever you are, around the world and in the country, that it's nice as well. If not, I hope it gets better for you real soon. Y'all, we got a lot to get into, a lot to talk about. And it don't stop. It just don't stop, right? It just don't stop. But I know Easter's coming up, right? Are you guys getting into Easter? It's the first week of April, right? If I'm not mistaken. So next weekend, next Sunday is Easter. Next Sunday is Easter. How about that? I know that's when everybody breaks their fast or whatever it was they were doing to, the commitment to, being a better human being, I suppose, or just getting healthier and showing love to God, in respects to God. So shout out to those who celebrate Easter. I remember back in the day, it was a big old Easter basket thing. Do people still dye eggs? Are y'all still dyeing eggs and hiding them for the kids? And do the kids like the eggs? Like, I've been out of the loop for a minute. I haven't had a little one in a while, but I'm wondering about that. And shout out to GB, who's making his way back to being the first in the chat. I appreciate you. Appreciate you. So you guys, join me in the chat, Facebook and YouTube. Like, follow, share if you're interested or you want other people to learn about In Your Ear Radio. So I remember dyeing the eggs, and having the little plastic eggs and the Easter baskets and all those things that people did. And of course, in the Black culture, we got a new outfit. If you were fortunate enough, you wore something new, fresh and crispy on Easter Sunday to go and hang out. You went to church, of course. So you started off with your big church hat and church dress, and the boys had on their suits, new suits. and and then afterwards you had on your play outfit, because back in the day we had actual play outfits. Like when we would come home and decide to go outside, I guess you probably don't really need them now because kids don't go outside and play. But for those who do, when we were kids, we had to change out our school clothes, our good clothes, and put on some play attire, the stuff that our parents wouldn't try to give us away, if we tore up. Okay. But yeah, so I remember there was some good times with Easter, but I do wonder, especially with the prices of eggs, are people still dying eggs? Y'all let me know in the chat if you guys are still doing that. I know what some people are doing differently now is they're getting the plastic eggs and they're putting toys, money, and candy in them. I think that's cool too. I think that's real, real cool. Better than them eggs. But I wonder, let me know about that. A funny clip I was listening to that I'll share with you guys was a man who had something to say about Easter, which pretty much reflects on most of the things I talk about, related to social justice, you guys, activism and just the world we live in today, just regular old social life experiences that happen. And he threw Jesus in it. He threw Jesus in the social justice arena and explained the story of Jesus as it may have never been explained before. Or maybe people just interpret who Jesus was differently. And again, this is a time that people do celebrate Jesus, right? Because those who believe he did come from after, being crucified, it return to life in the physical. So I want to play this clip of this guy, and you can get his perspective on who Jesus truly and really was, for those who may not know. Okay, so here he is on IG. I'm going to play this audio.
And since Easter is right around the corner, I just want to remind you that Jesus, as the story is told, was crucified on a cross. The cross was an execution method that was reserved specifically for political dissidents, people who went against the government, the governing authorities. That's who the cross was reserved for. They didn't crucify that man for saying, I've come to give you spiritual nourishment. You don't get crucified for doing that. Nobody's ever gotten crucified for that. Nobody's ever been persecuted by the state for saying, I just want to get you out of your mental prisons. Like, nah. He was talking about literal poor people, literal prisoners, literal sick people, and literal marginalized people. And since Easter is right around.
So, what you think? I agree. I think that is one of the reasons why he got shut down. And while I'm hearing this brother speak on that, talking about advocate for the poor, to advocate for those the have-nots, that they didn't want to hear that. And while I'm hearing him say that, I'm thinking about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I'm thinking about Malcolm X. I'm thinking about all the people who were assassinated when they did start to speak out about against the poor. Because remember, when you're talking about poor people, you're not just talking about one group of people. Poor people come in all demographics, all age ranges, all shades, all ethnicities. And so that makes it a majority in some instances. And, when they tell you that the 1 to 10% of the wealthy hold, people, 1 to 10% of the people hold all of the wealth, then that means the rest of the people might not be doing too great. You might be middle class, or you're all right, you know what I'm saying? But for the most part, there are many more people who are not in a position to be able to take care of their families, to eat or have health care and things of that nature. So he said Jesus, that's why they didn't like Jesus, because he was speaking out against those things. One thing I will push back on that he said is that they weren't necessarily mad about him talking about spirituality and things of that nature. And I think about, in the 1800s, especially in the European culture, where people who were considered witches per se were on that spiritual realm where they could maybe see, sense things, were like prophets in some nature. They went into the fields to get herbs and things of that nature to heal people, and did whatever rituals they do. Those people were killed and persecuted, and they called them witches. And we still have witches to this day. And I think, we allowed the colonizers to manipulate our perception of people in a way that makes everything negative, that goes against what they believe in. So if you have pharmaceuticals, we have medicines, right? that the FDA approves, which has not a whole lot of regulation, right? They can pretty much regulate themselves. Regulators, is that a wow? Who's that? Dang, brain fart. Anyway, y'all know what I'm talking about. But they were FDA is allowed to regulate themselves, and then you have natural medicines where people use herbs and things of that nature to heal. And you'll see on the bottle most of the time on your herbal supplements that not FDA approved, and that'll kind of trigger you to think that maybe it's not safe or maybe it's not going to do the job. But keep in mind that medicine, pharmaceutical medicines, is a derivative of natural herbs, things that come from the earth for you and me, because God put it here for you and me. So you have things like all of the garlic, you think of turmeric, you think of all of the things. I mean, the list is so long of things that we put in our bodies that help to heal. The actual sun is vitamin D. A lot of us get it in a bottle, but you can just go sit out 15 minutes a day and absorb the sun on any given day to pretty much build up what you need to be able to maintain a healthy body, organs, and all those things. But so even with medicine, you hear it's being looked down upon. People don't that are have deep pockets and want to maintain deep pockets don't want people to deviate outside of what they give us. So when we talk about witches, women and men who would go and concoct things to heal were looked at as evil, that they worship the devil, they told us. And a lot of these people were killed. They were literally hanged from trees. And again, a lot of that happened in Europe, because we know on the continent in Africa, that was a natural thing. It was natural to use the earth to heal. We know the indigenous people here in America were the same. So for most people of color have an understanding of what God left here for us to be able to heal ourselves. But it's something about the colonizers that didn't, even if they know and understand what God left here for us to be able to, survive and sustain, they want to be their own entity. They want to separate themselves from God, per se. I mean, literally. And so they give a bad name to good things. And we have to unprogram ourselves. We have to unprogram ourselves from what we've been conditioned to think about things. Even when we think about voodoo and things of that nature, like when you compare that to people, now I'm not saying that people don't do wicked things, because if you have the knowledge and information to be able to do something positive, you can use that same science to do the opposite. There's always an equal and opposite reaction, right? There's always an equal and opposite to any situation, formula, whatever it is. So it's not to say that that's not happening, that people don't use medicine or voodoo or witchcraft in a negative way, but that's not what it was intended for originally and overall. And I don't think the majority of people do. Again, just speaking on, even with voodoo, you have people telling you that that's witchcraft and that you're trying to speak to the dead and blah, blah, blah. And you compare it to a literal prayer when you just put your hands together and you ask the spirits, whoever it is that you speak to bring goodwill to you. For most of us, when we pray, it's about bringing goodwill, whether it be financial, mental, or physical health, just goodwill for others, ourselves, for the world. And what is that not? I mean, comparing it to, if you, some people use certain things, they have the rosemary beads, like, is that evil? So you just really have to be a critical thinker and be open to unlearning the things that we were taught and conditioned to believe, because it was intentional. It was intentional by way of the colonizers to make sure that we follow their lead. So we remain deaf, dumb, and blind and not woke. Because you see how mad they get when we get woke. They start firing people and talking about them, and you know how it go. I mean, even now we have the No Kings Parade. Y'all, anybody out there? Is that where everybody at right now, at the No Kings Parade? I think this is our third annual one. So it's today. It's going on right now. They say it's over 3,000 areas nationally here in the United States that are out protesting against our government, and particularly speaking to the House, saying, do your job. We have people who are pretty much just showing who they've always been, but they are being able to get away with it. So they are not voting in the interest of those who are their constituents. Remember, some people have millions and billions of dollars. Some people have no money at all. But one thing we all have in common that does not change, period, is that one vote. We all have that. No one gets more based on your income, lack thereof, or the abundance of. We all have just one vote. So all of us who did participate, who do participate in this whole what we call a political arena, said put our voices in. We said what we said. We put these people in office for a reason, and to look up and see that they're not even concerned about their constituents. They're not even concerned about the people who voted them in, who financed them, because people donate to these politicians so that they can, make more ground, make more, spread themselves around a little bit more. When they have the extra money by way of TV, flyers, all that shit you get in the mail. You know what I'm saying? Um, and all the things they do to hire people to help. And you had TSA workers literally not getting paid when, even though this was all about the SAVE Act, which we'll get into as well, even though this was all about the SAVE Act, because the SAVE Act was about voting, about the Republicans, the Heritage Foundation, number 47, y'all's president, wanting to suppress the votes. And that's what the SAVE Act is about. And one workaround with the SAVE Act and ways that they're doing that is making it harder for people who change their name. And we've touted, we emphasize how women are going to be affected mostly. And the reason being because a lot of women get married and change their name, right? And so what name's on your birth certificate is not going to be on your ID. And so when they're looking at your ID, they can, say, hey, this says, we don't know if you're a citizen. The bottom line is they're saying that there's a lot of illegal, they don't want people who are not documented or here illegally, undocumented, to be able to vote. The facts are that the voting fraud data shows that is at 0.003%. And those that they caught cheating in the voting political arena Guess who? Republicans, majority. And again, 0.003% caused them to create the SAVE Act, a bill that would cause it to be more difficult to vote. And again, we'll get more into that, but that's what this was all about. And the Democrats are saying no, because this is just bunkers. This is called voter suppression, and we're not with it. We fought you last year trying to keep people on, maintain their health care, and we had to succumb to that because you guys are willing to starve out, your own American constituents. Let alone Cuba, babies are dying in incubators right now, people on respirators, they're being starved out because America decides if we don't get what we want, we don't give a damn, everybody can go. And that's exactly what's happening. So that's what this is all about. And so the Democrats said, no, we ain't folding. The Republicans said, well, we ain't folding. So they're not going to amend, they're not going to compromise. They're saying, you have to go with what we want. We're not changing anything. And they say, well, whatever, we'll talk about this later. But in the meantime, the TSA workers should not be penalized and go, without pay because people can't make up their minds. We can't come to a compromise. So let's at least make sure that the TSA workers and DHS workers still get paid while we are fighting this out. And the Republican Party voted hell to the no, and then turned around and put on government websites that due to Democrats not agreeing, the government is basically said the government is shut down because of the Democrats, not telling the story of we want to suppress voting rights. Democrats don't want it and they won't vote for it, and we won't compromise and still pay you. Instead, they wanted the story to be that the Democrats is why they without pay. Interesting enough. And we've seen this done time and time again. So I don't even know how people could even support the Republican Party, whatever your ideals is. I hear people say, well, I'm a conservative or I'm this and I'm that. And whatever. I'm not even with the talking points at this point anymore. It's like, really? Like, whatever they said, it's about what they're doing. And what you see them doing is, starving people out. And you got a president saying, just go to work anyway. Well, how are they going to get there? They got to pay for gas. And gas is like $1 million right now a gallon. I mean, come on, at $5 in some states. People got daycare. The daycare people ain't waiting for TSA. The Republican Party to grow a heart. They're not waiting for that. They want to get paid. And everybody needs to get paid because everybody needs to eat. It's a domino effect. And so it affects anybody, the working class, period, and even the poor, the working poor, the middle class, everybody's affected by this. And so I get why people are out on the street. Shout out to Bruce Springsteen out at the No Kings Parade. He was singing his song, Streets of Minneapolis, at the state Minnesota Capitol today. And, again, the only way you can really be heard is to get out and speak and let it be known that how you feel about things. But that's just not enough. You definitely need to also get out and vote, and that's just as important, because people like that shouldn't be in office. And we see all of this happening, right? We see them, starving out TSA workers to where some people are calling off or not even going into work. And so what I really, really love about this is how Delta pushed back. Delta pushed back, and I'm like, that's how you do it. So if you guys aren't aware, as of today, March 27th, yesterday, I'm sorry, today's the 28th, 2026, effectively the shutdown will be ending. And the Senate, they finally approved to fund, well, the shutdown, I guess it is ending, or was said, what I'm reading says it's ending, but the main thing is the Democrats have not signed to approve the SAVE Act. So I don't see the shutdown as being ended. The TSA shutdown, let me speak correct, let me get the verbiage correct. The TSA shutdown is effectively ended as of yesterday with the Senate approval to fund most of the Department of Homeland Security. Um, and that's awesome. But the backstory to that is what I believe it to be is the pressure. Okay, shout out to Jill Scott. So much pressure. Okay, um, is that recently Delta said, okay, so you're not going to pay TSA workers because you mad that the Democrats won't sign a bill that's going to suppress the votes of the American people, taxpaying American people, citizens of the American country. So we're not going to make it convenient for you, Congress, to be able to get on planes. Because right now they got a little prestige, right? Delta was, escorting them. They get to the front of the line. I'm sure they were in the Sky Mile room or whatever it's called. But they had a level of prestige where they wouldn't have to stand in these long lines that you were seeing in airports like Atlanta, New York, Houston, where people are wrapped around a corner and just looking for all the patients they can find, where they're being told to get to the airport 6 hours early because, again, the workers weren't there. And then you got ICE there intimidating people. Just their presence is intimidating. Black people can understand that just with policing, period. Just seeing a police present, but you had ICE there, but you have people wrapped around a corner getting in line to go through TSA because they got to get checked, while Congress, the entire Republican Party, voted against paying the TSA. Had they smiling asses still getting on the plane with no sweat, nothing changed for you. Delta said, hell to the no. Y'all gonna get in line with the rest of them. All your privileges have been revoked. If this is how y'all gonna treat the American people, then this is how we gonna treat the American people, because the Congress is American. Like, who are y'all? Like, why do y'all think y'all are above the law, or that you're bigger and better than the rest of us? Because the only reason why you're there is because you were voted in. Yes, you had lobbyists to support your interests and to back you to make it more interesting, because we know a lot of people just get voted in based on popularity. Like, you just used to the name, you think about it, and I'm not saying this is why this Black man got voted in, but there's a representative in the Congress by the name of Al Green. How many people really just check that box because of his name? You know what I'm saying? I mean, when people are voting for judges and things of the nature, I know for us, some Black people, we just find a Black name and we go for it. If it's a Democrat or whatever party we support, it's a Black name. And so a lot of, that backing, all that funding that the lobbyists give these people, that helped. But we all have just that one vote. So that one vote was a collaborative effort for everyone to put you in that position. And then you tried to starve the people out. You tried to force what you did last year with the Affordable Care Act, with healthcare that has knocked off millions, hundreds of millions of people off of healthcare, not being able to have healthcare. You're trying to do the same thing right now. So shout out to Delta, because guess what? Again, now the TSA is getting paid, and I'm so happy for TSA. I'm so happy for people who have to travel. I know a lot of us, look, we're going to live our best lives and we're going to get out there regardless. We're going to stand in them 6 hour lines. But me, I'm gassing up until you know what I'm saying? I stand back. If y'all ever watch Belly, what's old boy with the glasses eating the banana? I stand back and just observe. I'm watching. I don't like that shit. I don't like that. And then once things get, on track to where, I can move the way I want to move, then that's when I step in. That's what I did during the pandemic. So shout out to that. During this shutdown, this partial government shutdown, which began February 14th of 2026, it left TSA officers without pay for over a month, causing severe staffing shortages, long airport lines, and over 450 resignations nationwide. And you have to think about the kind of what it takes to resign. These people, I don't know how long they've had this career in aviation with the TSA or whatnot, but 450 resignations, people walking away from pensions, people walking away from probably a good pay, people walking away from what was known to be security. They just like they sick of it. Middle fingers up. We just went through this. We went through the longest shutdown, which was over 43 days in the history of the United States. Just last year. And here we go again. Y'all playing with my emotions. And so 450 resignations. Many airports experienced call-out rates exceeding over 40%, with some single day absentee rates reaching 55%. Can you imagine that? So these lines are wrapped around the buildings, and Congress was thinking they'd still gonna get to the front of the line. Hell no, no, son, that's not what's happening. So again, Houston Hobby International Airport, they had the biggest delays, I think. Immigration Customs, again, they pulled up, and it wasn't a good look. They were just standing around. I mean, where they do that at? Well, you can just have a job and stand around and don't do anything. But I love the way this man explains it, which is pretty much what I said, but I just want to reiterate. I got some backup on what I'm saying, is basically what I'm saying. Who says, why the Senate turned around and voted unanimously when initially they voted against funding TSA while they were trying to decide how to move the SAVE Act. So I want to play this gentleman, what he has to say again for some backup. And let me see if I can get him going. Really interesting. It's really, really interesting to see how, when they are inconvenienced, then it's an issue. When they are inconvenienced, then it becomes an issue. And I'm with it. So I'm just trying to find it. And y'all can hear what this man has to say.
We were all sleeping. Republicans in the Senate turned on Trump and voted unanimously with Democrats to fully pay TSA agents after 40 fucking days of a government shutdown. And they turned on Trump because they specifically excluded money for ICE and Border Patrol. But that's not even the real story. The real story is why this happened. Why Republicans turned on Trump and voted unanimously with Democrats. And the reason why is because Delta Airlines canceled all special perks and services for all Congress members until they voted to fully fund TSA agents. And because TMZ also urged everybody to send them pictures of any and every congressperson who was seen on vacation while TSA agents were literally suffering with no pay. And that was a lesson right there. The fact that Trump was never the pressure point, he was always the shield. Every time Trump wanted to do something like the big beautiful bill that gave trillions in tax cuts to the ultra rich, or when he bombed Iran and Republicans in Congress wouldn't tell him that he didn't have the authority to do it. Republicans in Congress have always hid behind Trump's bullshit for years. He absorbs the outrage, takes the heat, and they get to shrug and say that, what can we do about it? Or, I didn't see it, I don't know anything about it. But the moment the consequences landed on them personally, they fucking folded. The reality is that Trump is a fucking narcissist. He genuinely does not process public humiliation the same way that normal people do. It actually fuels him. But Republicans who aren't term limited, they fucking care deeply about their reputation, their comfort, and their status. They just never really had to defend it directly because Trump always got the heat. This vote revealed the architecture of the system, and it works like this. Trump does the unpopular thing, the outrage goes to Trump. Republicans in Congress who can stop it act stupid, and nobody's perks get touched. They rinse and repeat this for years, and Trump always gets away with it. The TSA situation broke that architecture because Trump wasn't the fucking variable. Congress was. And the second that happened, boom, a unanimous motherfucking vote. So the question is, what if we stopped trying to move Trump and started making Congress own every single fucking decision? And I'm not just talking about call your congressman. I'm also talking about forcing these corporations to turn on government. We're talking about Delta level consequences, TMZ level public targeting, making every Republican senator who votes to gut Medicaid explain it at their airport date. Make them own the deportations. Make them own the cuts by name in public where their lives are. Trump will never fold to shame, but this week proved that Congress, they fold fast as fuck.
They fold fast, okay? And the cold part about it is it's not like they're losing money, they're not losing food. It's basically just their privilege. Because Congress lost their privileges, the Senate lost their privileges. The Republican Senate lost their privileges. That affected the Democrats and the independents as well. But we know the reason why they were in this position was because they wouldn't pay the TSA workers. How cruel you gotta be? Like, who raised you? My goodness. Um, that was the only reason. It wasn't because they were starving or they were going to it was a humanity issue. It was about having a privilege, having access, being able to be at the front of the line. They were going to lose those privileges, that they weren't able to have a special service desk as a client anymore, because everybody gonna suffer. We all suffer. You don't get to go on trips, because they were even encouraging during this crisis. Delta was encouraging people to send photos of their representatives on vacation during this shutdown. TSA workers not getting paid, and y'all still out living y'all best life, getting access to, first class prestige treatment at the airport, while everybody else is suffering. And we ain't even put this bill in. Some white man put this bill in last year and decided that he wanted to suppress the vote because he works with the Heritage Foundation, and this is part of Project 2025. Now, I got some pushback from that listening to my girl Reese Copeland. I'm gonna give you her perspective as well. But there is an article in the Project 2025 that says that they want to privatize TSA. So it would make sense that this would be been a way, the way to get the ball rolling to possibly start the movement of privatizing TSA. And so a lot of people spoke to that, saying it's in Project 2025. And this is what's going to happen next. So I'm going to play Reese Colbert's clip too as well. She cusses too. Y'all, I think people have always cussed. I mean, shout out to Miss Trish, who, co-hosts with me since, for years, and co-hosts with me on the After Dark show. Y'all know my girl is going to use all the colorful adjectives to say what she got to say. But I think in this climate, over time, having this raggedy, underqualified person as a representative of the United States, who we call a president, for the 47th time, as number 47, just being so reckless with the way he speaks that there's no decorum anymore. People aren't trying to be, sensitive to people's ears who aren't used to hearing stuff, because, everything that we hear every day, even though it's not considered profanity, it is profane. And so you're going to hear, you notice you hear a lot more people who are very educated, they're intelligent, they know what they're talking about, they advocate for the people, cussing, because what else can you do? What else, sometimes you got to be profane to be profound. And this whole situation is freaking profanity. So you hear that a lot. So I just wanted to put that out there. But yeah, so even Delta said, hey, look, if y'all see these people out here in these streets, let me know. Y'all, Elon had jumped into the chat. Someone he would offer pay to the TSA. Just some messy, devilish stuff, but it was really wild. But again, people reference the Project 2025, and they said, hey, they're trying to wiggle us into their agenda, which they are. The Heritage Foundation is doing a thug thizzle, y'all. If you don't know, we'll get into that more too. But the Heritage Foundation, founded decades ago in the 70s, they have always had an agenda to have this be a Christian nationalist country where, women were subservient to men, and everybody else was, under the begging, basically just treated like trash, and the white men were on top. And that's their entire goal. They say they want to shrink government, but you see what they do with government. They take all of our money from government and give it to their people, and they definitely fire people. But are they really shrinking government? Because the government isn't everything. They got ICE at the airport, but y'all want to shrink government looking asses, okay? But so the Heritage Foundation, they have a lot of money, and they spend time. You think about how, what boycotts that we've done over the years historically. Black people, we train to boycott. We train to even be arrested to protest certain things. But the Heritage Foundation does the same thing to get people in political positions to advance their agenda. And so they put money behind them and get them into these offices. So I hear you when you hear people say things like, they pick our president, or they pick this person, they pick that. Technically they do their job, but we have a job too. And again, we all just have one vote. So it's not like, unless they cheat, which, that is an issue, but that don't stop us from fighting, because we don't just say, oh, you cheat, so you can just have it. No. Justice will be served. And we'll talk about justice when we talk about reparations, and how slavery is also on the table to be discussed, and people, need to be held accountable for their injustices they done to people. But justice will be served. We don't just lay down. We ain't getting down. We ain't laying down. We ain't lying down. We're going to keep fighting. There's going to be some people that fall by the wayside, but that's just what it is. All is fair in love and war, they say. I think it's a cold, cold world. But I want to play what she has to say. Again, this is Reese Colbert. She has a show on Saturdays. I normally catch her on the Clay Kane show throughout the week on Urban View. That's yeah, I listen to it on the app, but it's a Clay Kane show. But she also has her own show in the evening or on Saturday afternoon called the Reese Colbert Show. And she has a game. It's called Am I Tripping, which I play, especially on my After Dark. And she's just a cool sister. I really like her. I feel so warm and fuzzy that we have so many, not just beautiful, but intelligent, down to earth women out here advocating for all of us. And we should be very proud of that. Shout out to Black women. But anyway, this is what she had to say for people who think this is part of the Project 2025 agenda to try to privatize TSA. And then another thing, right before I play that, I'm reading the headline now. Trump has signed an executive order for immediate pay to TSA, making it sound like he came and saved the day, like he put on the cape. Now, I know in the movie Superman is white, but you ain't him, okay? You did not save the day. The only, one of the main reasons why those Senate Republicans unanimously, meaning 100%, voted not to pay the TSA workers because they kiss your ass. And now they like, hell no, now we suffering, and now they growing some balls, and you acting like we was with it all along. So it's just so many games being played. But this is her perspective and her take. Again, Reese Colbert on this isn't a Project 2025 agenda per se. And I just added that per se in the end. But hear what she has to say with her colorful adjective, having self.
Look, Republicans ain't shit, but I need y'all to stop giving them credit where they don't deserve the credit. This DHS shutdown, TSA shutdown is not some 10-dimensional chess that they're playing to privatize TSA. It is just called incompetent legislating. Now, y'all are wearing my ass out talking about this, how they're trying to privatize TSA. This is what Project 2025 says. Yes, Project 2025 does call for privatizing TSA. However, it takes an act of Congress to do that. Now, since I'm a facts, not feelings kind of girl, I'm going to give you the tea on where that stands. Spoiler alert, nowhere. That's where it stands. There has only been one bill in the past decade to trying to abolish TSA. It's called the Abolish TSA Act of 2025, and it was introduced by Republican Senators Mike Lee and Tommy Tuberville. There are no other co-sponsors for this bill. You would need at least 60 votes, and they only got 2 of the 60 that they would need. And obviously, Republicans do not hold 60 Senate seats, and they ain't got no path to doing that with the way they're fucking up right now. There's also no companion legislation in the House. Mind you, this bill was introduced in the last congressional session. There is no Abolish TSA Act of 2026. Now, that's not to say that it won't be introduced, but they have not introduced it yet. Now, what does that act do? It abolishes TSA in 3 years. So the most optimistic timeline will be 3 years from now. What's 3 years from now? Hopefully, a goddamn Democratic trifecta, y'all get y'all asses out and vote. It directs the Department of Homeland Security to develop a reorganization plan for TSA, which is subject to congressional approval. So even if the Abolish TSA Act, which has not been introduced yet, passes, the plan to abolish it would have to be approved by Congress, which if y'all got your asses out and voted in November, you won't even have a Republican in Congress to push this shit through. So they would transfer all the activities in terms of screening to another organization and private screening companies. Now, those private screening companies are not scaled up to take over the entire TSA operations for the entire country. They would have to hire. That's why this is at minimum and optimistically a 3-year process. A 3-year process in which at any point you could have Congress come in and stop. So I say all that to say, y'all, they are not about to abolish TSA. They do not have the political capital to do it, and they cannot maintain the political capital to do it over the extensive time frame that any bill trying to abolish TSA would require. And let me add that this administration has already tried and failed to terminate the collective bargaining agreement with TSA employees. And so to privatize TSA, you'd have to go through the TSA union and Congress. But if you feel that concerned about TSA going private because of Project 2025, then you know what you can do. Get your ass out and vote. Look,
You heard what she said. Okay. Okay, so that I think that's good news. That and I think by them, going ahead and leaving TSA out of it. You know what I'm saying? They didn't sign up to be a part of that BS. Leaving deciding to leave them out of it and starting to pay them as of yesterday. That goes to prove that yeah, that's not what's happening with the Project 2025. But the Project 2025 is in effect. All of this that is happening, a lot of what is happening in politics has everything to do with the Heritage Foundation and those who support Project 2025, the white nationalists, and um, all of the others. So, it's still here. And you can go to the website, Project 2025 Tracker, to learn exactly where we are in this, what bills have been passed in response to things that have been pushed under Project 2025. You can go in and see what's really in real time. What are we being affected by going to the Project 2025 Tracker website? So I encourage you guys to do that because you'll really get to really understand that this is not a game. This is serious, and we're in a fight, and we have to be able to be strategic and know and understand that you win some, you lose some, but you can live to see another day if you stay in the fight. You stay in the fight, and that's what we need to do. And the bare minimum and the most important thing we can do is to vote. Again, one thing we all have in common, trillionaire or somebody with not a cent in their pocket, is that we all have one vote. Nobody gets more than one, no matter how much you make, no matter how cute you are, no matter how ugly you are. Okay, everybody only gets one vote. And you know how they try to suppress that, because those who may not get a vote, of course, those who are under 18, but those who are eligible to vote, who are over 18, in some states, they don't let you vote if you're convicted. You have felonies, except the president can vote, which he did by mail after he's trying to suppress the vote under the SAVE Act to prevent other people from being able to vote by mail, which would affect the disabled, which would affect the elderly, which would affect the people who don't have the ability to get out and go find their voting locations. They have to mail it in, which would affect the military. I mean, make it make sense. And again, last year, when the Democrats were trying to save the Affordable Care Act that ended the Medicaid protections, it expired the subsidies, and yeah, it just triggered a coverage crisis because people's health care, what was the primary, it went up by, it was 114%. So the premiums, what I'm trying to say, the premiums, healthcare premiums went up by 114%. So if you can't afford to pay 2 to 3 times more than what you were paying previously in the previous years, then you dropped out because you got to eat. You might just have to go find you a witch doctor and get some herbals, do a natural remedy somewhere, you know what I'm talking about, to try to stay alive and healthy or whatever it is you need to be able to maintain. But yeah, so under this last shutdown, again, that was the longest one, 43 days. 11 billion was lost. 7 to 11 billion was lost in our GDP here in the United States. Again, millions of people have been pushed off now. It's a lot. It's a lot, you guys. It's a lot. It's really, really sad, and unfortunate that these people that are in these seats who have the best welfare that money can buy. Because remember, these corporate people are getting, they taxpayers are paying for their health care. Okay. They don't want other taxpayers to pay for other people's health care, but their health care is being funded by us. But they want to tell us how much we should have to pay. They get all the, we saw peak Hegseth spending up to billions on donuts, collaborative pianos, dinners, flights, travel. But they don't want to pay the American people who are funding this what he's doing. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. So again, we still have to, put pressure on. We definitely don't want the SAVE Act to pass because it definitely, voter suppression is going to make it very, very more difficult. Again, it's going to prohibit states from registering an individual to vote in the federal election unless at the time the individual applies to register to vote, the individual provides documentary proof of the U.S. citizenship. It requires states to establish an alternative process under which the applicant may submit. I mean, it's just a lot. Like, you can't just go in and show your ID. Like, they accept I think it's a gun license or maybe a hunter's license, but I don't know if the real ID is enough. because you don't have to be a U.S. citizen to have a real ID. But even though with the real ID, you have to show all your documentation, your birth certificate. But they want to be able to prove that you're a U.S. citizen because there's 0.003% voter fraud. No, I got a spoiler alert for you guys. For those who believe that it's all about immigration and voter fraud, it's about suppressing the vote. You can go Google anywhere and you will hear Republicans tell you that they do not want everybody to vote because when everybody votes, they lose. Okay, and they don't want to lose. They don't want to lose. Just speaking of this whole agenda and strategy to suppress the vote and just to get people to keep people apathetic. Remember, 90 million people did not vote in this prior election. And this is why we are where we are today. We can accuse those who that had cheated, because we know when we talk about cheating, with the machines, but voter suppression is another form of cheating, hiring the Russians to push propaganda telling you that Kamala ain't black, or that, talking about her giving you her coochie facts, who she didn't slept with, talking about how she incarcerated so many thousands of men, all the lies and propaganda that's all people need to hear, because if you look like you serious, some people will believe you. There's not a lot of critical thinking in a lot of people, unfortunately, but all of the things that they did to suppress the vote, which is a form of cheating, is what they did. But we can't count out those 90 million people who sat home because they were apathetic. And, it made it, even harder for us. There was a quote I read, and I thought it was a really good quote. And it said that, we, in this day and time, we're not suffering from voter suppression. We are suffering from voter depression. And so I just want you guys to marinate on that. Because, that could be it. We're just a little bit tired of, what's going on, some of us. But I need to encourage those who didn't vote that you still have an opportunity to change the world, to change this country, and to be a part of the change, because we need you. We need you. And for those who still support them other people, middle fingers up. But anyways, I was watching, I don't know what you guys have been watching. If you had time to watch, I don't have a lot of time to watch things. I'm starting my next book, Sky Full of Elephants. I'm still pushing that. If you have not read Sky Full of Elephants, you will not be disappointed. I would encourage you guys to pick up that book or listen to it. You will really, really enjoy it. Again, it starts off just telling the story of a world where all of the white people literally died by suicide. They walked into the river and just ejected themselves from society. And then you get to read what happens next. And I would just say this without spoiling the story. It was a peaceful read through and through. There was no violence, which is one of the things I found interesting too, having a book club meeting, because we discussed the book, is some of the women were a little disappointed. They was like, we needed more action, and we needed, it was an overall feeling of, it wasn't enough action, wasn't enough drama. Somebody even said, I wish the white people didn't die so early in the story, because that is the beginning of a story in the book. And it just came to me immediately how traumatized we are as a people, and I'll speak for Black people in general, that we're so used to having the story end violently, or having to have a violent way for us to survive, or having white people be a part of our story, in our survival story, that we couldn't even imagine, or at least marinate in the idea of the author's story of us existing peacefully. Because again, there was no violence. They reiterated that, those who read the book, that there was no violence, there was no action, is what we call it. Because another thing I thought about is when I was back in the day and talking to another white boy, we were just talking about race and rap, and he, was comparing, hip hop to, some of the violent ways in which hip hop is. And I said, it's all about this conditioning. And, and I go back to the thought of thinking about cultural conditioning, because I explained to him, I said, when white people create music, when they create movies, they call it action packed. Like, it's all the killing you can muster in a day. I mean, it's mass killing. You add it all up. A lot of white women die. A lot of white men die. A lot of people die in these movies, right? But we call it action packed. But when Black people create, we create our art, it's called violence, okay? And so it's the same here. Like, the ladies were missing action in the book, A Sky Full of Elephants, which is violence. And like I said, it was a peaceful read. Sky Full of Elephants, I encourage But what I was watching, it's a documentary that I think came out in 2024, but I guess they're rerunning it maybe because when I looked at it, it said it came out not this year, it didn't come out in 2026, but PBS is running. It's called White with Fear. And it's a documentary that's like a decade and just investigation on just how the propaganda was used to control the minds of the people. Because again, these people have an agenda. When I talk about the Heritage Foundation, when I talk about Moms of Liberty, which I talked about last week, and the Daughters of the Confederate, they all have an agenda, and it does not include everybody. It includes putting them on top and everybody else on the bottom. And the white women are in agreement to relinquish all of their rights in order for the white men, their brothers, cousins, uncles, granddaddies, to be able to be in that position. And so White with Fear is a documentary that explores how America's conservative political machine has exploited racial lines to gain power and stroke narratives of white victimization. Let me say that again so you guys can think about that when you're watching Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, when you're watching all of the things trending. And I'm really, speaking to people who are on the fence about being programmed, who don't believe they're being programmed, that it's really just the Democrats and they're the problem, or that it's really just the poor people, they're the problem. It's really just the people who are trying to flee all of the oppression and difficulties they're having in their country, they're the problem. So I'll repeat it just so you can let this sink in, just get a different view. If you look through these lenses, do you see something different when you hear people that come at you dogging out these people, immigrants, LGBTQ, anything they know that's going to trigger you, right? So White Fear is a documentary that explores how America's conservative political machine has exploited racial fault lines to gain power and stroke narratives of white victimization. It delves into, again, as I said, decade-long quest by these operatives to manipulate public perception and create fear around racial issues. They go in to manipulate public perception and create fear around racial issues. We've seen it all our lives as Black people. We've seen it how Black men have been sexualized, Black girls have been sexualized. They're looked at, Black men, as rapists and thieves and all of those things. When that's not the majority. That is definitely not the majority. Particularly, again, just speaking on this documentary, White Fear, it says particularly targeting white Americans. So they go in to manipulate the public perception and create fear around racial issues, particularly targeting white Americans. The documentary aims to shed light on how these tactics have been used to maintain power and influence political discourse in the United States. They are good at what they do. I tip my hat to their persistence, how they stay on, they never deviate from their plan. You don't see them beefing. I mean, you don't see them throwing nobody under the bus. If one of they good white nationalist brothers and raped and molested and stole and da-da-da, it's okay. I mean, we see that even here. As I want to get into the fact that America doesn't even want to acknowledge the atrocities that they caused through slavery. They voted against recognizing that and giving people reparations and justice for stealing people and forcing them to work for centuries, along with raping and breeding them and all of the other atrocities that still are happening now. Call slavery by another name because it is still in effect. The 13th Amendment will remind you if you don't believe it. But this documentary, I didn't get to finish it, and I probably will have to just take it in increments because it's very aggravating. It upsets you. So it's kind of like how, you hear some Black people say they can't watch movies where people were enslaved because it makes them angry. And when I watched this documentary, even though it's, targeting white people and what they've done to white people, how they destroyed the minds and the perceptions of white people, it's angering because all of what they've done has affected me, has affected my people and people around me, people who didn't have nothing to do with this, all because they have an agenda to rule over everybody. White men, these white nationalist men just have an agenda to rule the world. They mad Nas made If I Rule the World because they wanted that song. They wanted rights over that song, right? If I Rule the World. But theirs wouldn't be such a peaceful, Nas song, he says, he would take away beef felonies, you know, he would make sure all the kids were good, everybody was good, they song wouldn't go nothing like that, because you hear the song playing now, and all they want to do is hoard all the money and control the people and force people to work for them, okay, and just do what they do. But some of the things that really interest me in it was there was a white man there. He was running for office. I don't remember his name, but he's a politician. And he said out of his mouth, they got him on tape in his documentary, and he says, nobody asked me for my birth certificate. You can look at me and tell I'm an American. This is him talking with a microphone in front of you. You've seen the politicians in a room full of people sitting around. They might have a token black person in the room, but this is him. He's just to give you a visual, he's speaking in front of a crowd of people, because remember, that's one of the things they did when Barack Hussein Obama was running for president of the United States, as he was a senator, is that they were saying, oh, he's Muslim. So that's supposed to be a scary thing if you're Muslim, which means that you study Islam. And if anybody knows what Islam means, it means peace. So how can that be scary? How is that dangerous? Because you have people who come from that culture who are do or die, who are no different from people here in other cultures that are do or die. But they put fear into particularly white people, but it bled over to black people, because I knew some black people that used to be on my phone to my, he ain't American. And I'm like, and what? He showed his birth certificate over and over again. That was the whole thing. He needs to show his birth certificate. But this white man running for office, or was in office, because I don't remember who he was, literally said before hundreds or maybe thousands of people, nobody asked me for my birth certificate because they can look at me and tell I'm American. The caucasity of it. This is what we're dealing with, you guys. The caucasity of it, like the privilege, the entitlement. Like before you came here, if we going by color, this wasn't your land. No, the people that were the original people, they wouldn't count you as being from here. But white is, I guess, they think that they just supposed to just rule over everybody, and then they got the privilege and the power. And the other thing that really got to me was one of the guys were saying that if we allow women to vote, then we won't have a Christian nation. And so that was the other thing. So again, these people are staying on their agenda. And again, this is watching the documentary White with Fear that's on PBS. This another white man, I want to say his name was Lieberich, and I think he is a representative right now, but I couldn't remember. I was kind of like writing and listening and mad at the same time. So I didn't really I don't know if I have the correct name, but again, it's another white politician who's literally on record saying, we won't have a Christian nation if women can vote. We know that the Constitution separates church and state. I mean, if it was the other way around, if people was around here trying to make Islam the predominant religion and make it a law, it'll be a problem. It'll be a problem. If it was any other religion outside of Christianity, it would be a problem. But people seem to think that it's okay because somehow their white nationalist Christianity represents God as we know God, and absolutely not, because their God is the devil. Their God is the devil, and the devil is the devil. Okay. So yeah, I encourage you guys to watch it, especially with people who are brainwashed, who still sway to the other side and think that it's them, that it's the other side. It's sad enough that we have to even bang about these things, because the things that we're banging about is healthcare, free education, food for all. I was listening to somebody say it was a low number in the millions, maybe even under 100 million, and my number may be off, but listening to The View, and they were saying the amount of money it would take to eradicate homelessness in America is like 10 times what we're spending on war right now. And taking away the subsidies, eliminating healthcare, making it more expensive, the SNAP and all of the things that we're taking away from the elderly, the children, the disabled, is a drop in a bucket to what the spending is done here in the United States of America. And so for those who just want to bang and they're ignorant and they just have been programmed, because I do give space for people who are really brainwashed. I got a book called Brainwashed by Tom Burrell. I encourage you guys to read that too. brainwashed by Tom Burrell. And let them follow Tom Burrell too, because he's a white guy. He know what he's talking about. Um, let them watch this documentary. Maybe the light will start going on. Like, yeah, because it really breaks down, and you get an understanding of how they did what they did to the people, and why they're still stuck. Because when you talk to these people and watching these interviews, I see Don Lennon interviewing these white women and asking them like, why do you love Trump? Well, they're saying, oh, I love Trump, and they're like, why? And they're like, he's a good president. And he's like, well, what makes him good? And he's like, Biden wasn't good. Biden, and it's like, what policies did Biden do that weren't good? Well, he wasn't good on immigration. And I'm sitting here going, yeah, well, they had an immigration bill at the time that y'all's president was running, and he made a phone call to the House and said, don't pass this immigration bill. And I heard it was a really tough immigration bill. Don't pass this bill, because that's what he was running on, getting the immigrants out of here. But if you really cared about immigrants, and you cared about the immigration issue per se, then you would have said, you would have been happy. You'd been like, finally they did what I needed them to do, because you don't care about immigrants is what I'm saying. The point is to condition the people, the deaf, dumb, and blind, those who are poorly educated, that this is an issue, that these people are taking your jobs. I need to see the videos of white people picking strawberries, working on farms, because they lightened up a lot of the immigration rules on certain areas like farms, because we're not getting, the farmers' foods is just rotten. We beefing outside of the country, and we can't even move stuff inside of the country, because who here in America would rent at what it is, and everything costing what it is going to work for 10 cents an hour. And yeah, I'm being facetious, but it's under minimum wage. But that's why I encourage you guys to watch White with Fear. Again, it's on PBS. You might have to just watch it in increments, because it is frustrating to watch. It really is frustrating to watch. Last week, I highlighted Women's History Month, and we are getting into the end of Women's History Month. And I celebrated many, many people. I mean, the list is long. We could just spend a whole 90 minutes just talking about all the greatness of women of all ethnicities. And I like to focus a lot on Black women, because we didn't get to see a lot of that growing up. And we still don't see enough of it. And people need to be reprogrammed to know and understand how great we are. For those who've been conditioned to think of us any other way, the proof is in the pudding. We can show you better than we can tell you. And so I take pride in highlighting the things that Black women have done historically, especially during Women's History Month. I was also listening to a video, and I thought it was interesting that the mother was saying that her child went to school during Women's History Month, and they had to write for Women's History Month. One of the project assignments that they had was to write about a woman, maybe someone famous or whatnot. And so her child chose a Black woman, and the teacher, which I'm knowing it was a white woman. I mean, we got some deaf, dumb, and blind Black people, but Lord, I'm gonna just say this is a white woman, told this child that Black History Month was in February. In the month of March, you have to choose someone who is not Black. The ignorance is out there, y'all. The ignorance is out there, and it's frustrating. It's really, really frustrating. Just how ignorant people are, or just hateful, or just hate. Some of it's ignorance, some of it's really, really hate, and they with that agenda. They with that life of white nationalism and white men, wealthy white men, to be specific, because TSA workers are not all Black. TSA workers are not all brown. TSA workers are not all from other countries or immigrated here. Some of them are white people who were probably born here in the United States that lost pay. So that lets you further know they don't care about your ass either. But what really was just so much happening. So I guess it's this whole UN meeting and thing that went on where they voted on a lot of things. I don't know if these happened together or separate, but there was a meeting of the minds globally, leaders that voted on to make sure, or to vote that women should have equal rights globally. So that meant that we know here in the United States, even though the law says that we should equal pay, that women are getting paid the same as men for the same job. And we know that around the world, women are, treated less than, even though we bring these freaking people into the world, they treat us like we don't have the superpowers, like that we are less than, like, but anyway, they voted on this. There are some countries, I think it was Afghanistan, that just recently allowed women to be able to drive. Like, really? Like, we pushing non-pound babies out, carrying them and feeding them, sustaining them until they're able to feed themselves, and we can't drive. But anyway, so there was a vote globally to acknowledge and to make sure that women had the same rights as men. And I'm going to play this clip because I'm going to have you guess who was against this, who voted against this, who went on record and said they don't want women to have equal rights as men. And let me just get this clip for you again. It's another audio. It's a wild world we live in, y'all. But here's a lady explaining what had happened at this meeting.
This because so you probably don't know this because nobody's reporting on it, but for the last 10 days, the United Nations has been meeting to talk about the anniversary of the Commission on the Status of Women, which is basically like the global work to assure that women have equal rights and equal protections, etc. And it turns out that there is not a single country on the face of the earth where men and women have the same legal protections, which is kind of mind-blowing. But also unbelievable this week is that all the United Nations countries, except for a few that abstained, signed on to support this commitment to women's equality and to advancing the rights of women in the world. And every country in the world, except for the United States, signed on. And by the way, there's this treaty called CEDAW, which is the Global Treaty on Women's Rights. And there are 2 countries in the world that have refused to support it. Guess what they are?
Yeah.
The US and Iran. So we're bombing a country in part because of their egregious abuse of their own citizens. And yet apparently we agree with them. We agree with the Ayatollahs that women don't deserve full and equal rights in our society. So chew on that.
Chew on that. So she told you the United States was against it. Our very country, shout out to the Heritage Foundation, white nationalists, and all of those who want to keep women in a position of being subservient to white, wealthy men. And, one of the pushbacks they had, the United States, they said they didn't like the language on the AI regulation. So this is a whole bill, treaty or whatnot that they're signing and agreeing on, touching and agreeing on. And they said they didn't agree with it because they didn't like the verbiage, the language on AI regulation. Of course you don't. Did you just want AI to run wild? Yeah, did you guys hear recently that y'all's first lady, Melania, she is trying to get, I think these robots, actual robots, $25,000 per student to educate our students. There has been some pushback saying they're not safe, that they're harmful to kids. They are strong and they're violent, but she wants this in place of humans. She wants to pay $25,000 per have students have these robots. But anyway, back to this. So they didn't like the language on AI regulation. So that's why they didn't support the, voting for women to have equal rights for men. They didn't like the language on abortion rights, which is another reason why they didn't vote for women to have equal rights to men. And they didn't like the gender ideology. So this was another reason why they did not vote, the United States, to with the rest of the world, to make sure women had equal rights. So y'all need to know who y'all people are. I'm just letting you know who your people are. And so that's who they are. And speaking of voting and UN and global people coming together, leaders coming together to discuss what other things we should acknowledge and bring to the forefront. If you guys aren't aware, just recently there was a vote on slavery. And this, according to what I've heard, this happens every year. Every year, the leaders globally come together to talk about the atrocities of slavery and to discuss ways to move forward from it and to somehow offer what word am I looking for? Anyway, to pay people back for what harm has been caused, because the harm is ongoing still to this day, right? So there was a vote globally, and there were 3 countries who did not vote to go ahead and acknowledge slavery as being an atrocity, and to have a resolution that would include um, reparations. And I guess you can guess who that is too, right? Okay, USA, that's the United States of America. Israel, they pimp the USA's pimp, and Argentina. Um, nearly all of Europe abstained. There were other countries that just abstained. Maybe they needed more time to think about it. I don't give a damn. But literally on record, we have 3 countries, USA, Israel, and Argentina, who voted against acknowledging or giving reparations to those who were enslaved. And I got a few more clips that I want to put in here. Let me see if I can get this this YouTube one up, because I would like to share that one. But the first one I have is someone I was listening to on IG, pretty much giving a breakdown of what the whole meeting was about. So let me just get into that first. And this is the Merc. He's on YouTube as well, but he pretty much gives a breakdown of it. But the Merc, he has I wanted to give let's see, his takeaway, because there's been pushback. So even though we have this system where some people are upset that America is not supporting this, you have other people who are saying that, oh, the Africans, they sold people into slavery too. Well, there's different types of slavery. We did learn this in school, indentured servitude. And if you compare that to what Black and Africans experience, which was chattel slavery, it's not the same. When you think about indentured servitude or other forms of slavery, there was a cutoff. Like you owed someone. I compared it to what we deal with now when it comes to credit cards. Somebody owes you. Somebody owns your house until you pay them back. Somebody owns whatever, your car, until you pay them back. Somebody owns you until you pay off that credit card, or you're in debt, basically. And so that's how some other forms of slavery take effect, right? Again, indentured servitude. Sometimes you may pass your child along to work or to marry or whatever it may be, to pay off a debt, or just so that your family can maintain some level of sustainability or whatnot. But chattel slavery was Europeans literally going around the world to steal people and force them into working for them indefinitely. And so that's a big difference. And this went on for centuries. There was no contract. There was no after you pay me back. It was none of that. This went on for centuries. And, up until, the late 1800s, and up until now, if you ask the right people, still going on. So he had a little pushback on that. And I want to get into that too, but I definitely wanted to speak to what actually happened. And again, let me see if I can get the YouTube video up that talks to what actually happened in this meeting. So let me see if I can get it up. Hopefully I can. If not, I'll just play the audio. So let's see. And I push play, and it won't play. Let's try it again. Of course, whenever I try to do the YouTube thing, it don't like to be my friend. But we're going to work this out. We're going to get it done. And I'll just remove this for now. So basically, I'm trying to get this clip up that's going to explain.
And healing. The UN General Assembly voted to recognize.
So here's a
It's
clip.
a move towards justice and healing. The UN General Assembly voted to recognize the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime in human history. On Wednesday, Ghana's President John Mahama came here to the UN in person to promote this resolution put forward by his country.
We come together in solemn solidarity to affirm truth and pursue a route to healing and reparative justice. The adoption of this resolution serves as a safeguard against forgetting.
This resolution calls for formal global recognition of this historical crime and opens the door for reparatory justice measures. It also urges the restitution of stolen works of art. Well, the vote in the General Assembly was passed with 120 votes in favour, 3 against and 52 abstentions. Argentina is States, the 3 against the resolution. France and the UK were amongst those that abstained. Whilst the resolution really got the backing of much of the global south, it did prove controversial for some Western powers, mainly because they are concerned about the mention of reparations. They argue that modern governments should not be held legally liable for historical crimes. Supporters argue, however, that this is about recognition of justice, not blame for current generations, and that it is part of a process towards healing. Toronto youth poet Shahada Jack read her poem Reclaiming Our Pen in the General Assembly, honouring those whose stories were never given the chance to be told.
Having this conversation in a global sphere and in a global space like the United Nations, I think will continue to empower the youth to speak their truth and to learn the truths of our world.
Ghana's president quoted Luther King in the General Assembly Hall: "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends."
So, so you heard one of the representatives of Ghana pretty much explain what the U.S. says is their reason for not supporting this agenda. I mean, we know the real story too, don't we? We know for sure that they're never going to acknowledge that, because they still want to have this as an issue. They want to be able to enslave people and force them into captivity. They push immigration. They've made us believe that the immigration, there's an influx of violent immigrants coming into the country and we want them out. But instead, they're building facilities to house them here in the United States. So just make it make sense. But coming back to the other point, when we talk about this whole issue, because it just opens up a lot of other conversation, right? When we talk about, Africans and what their contribution was to people being enslaved. I'm going to play Merck, and this is an audio and what he had to say in reference to Africa and their role in slavery.
Could Africa be a step closer to reparations for slavery? 2 days ago, Ghana's President John Mahama helped secure a UN resolution recognizing the transatlantic slave trade as the greatest crime against humanity in history. Of course, European nations have pushed back, denying responsibility for the crimes of their ancestors, even though their empires, institutions, and economies are still standing on wealth built from those same crimes. But what really saddened me was seeing some Black Americans hating on Ghana's booth, saying Ghana and other African nations sold slaves, took part in the trade, have no right to demand anything, and should be paying reparations too. By the end of this video, you will understand why repeating the line, Africans sold their own, is doing the work of white supremacy. And anyone white or Black saying it are agents of the machine. Pay attention. To the West, Africa is a monolith. One people, one culture, one identity. The truth is, Africa was home to thousands of tribes, kingdoms, and cultures long before colonization. When wars happened, prisoners were taken. Sometimes they became slaves, sometimes those slaves were sold to Europeans. But Africans did not understand the full horror awaiting those slaves in the Americas. Also, African rulers never had a choice. It was sell or die. Refuse and Europeans would take people anyway and destroy your kingdom for resisting. That's not partnership, that's terrorism. If Africans colonized Europe, turned it into one invented country, and the King of England, with a gun to his head, sold captured French or German prisoners to Africans, would you say Europeans sold their own? Even though they were different peoples with different languages, cultures, and histories, and often bitter enemies. Yes, some African rulers willingly took part, but do you use them to represent the majority who resisted and died fighting colonizers? Do the Stephen and Uncle Ruckus figures cancel out the Nat Turners and Harriet Tubmans? It's a trap. Classic divide and conquer. Slavery devastated Africa. It destroyed families, kingdoms, religions, languages, and futures. It triggered wars and left economic chains we are still wearing today. They never focus on the millions of Africans who fought slave traders and colonizers. The only narrative pushed by the criminals is Africans sold Africans into slavery. And too many of you repeat it because it's easier to fight your brother than face your true enemy. In law, there is a concept called precedent. If one claim wins, it becomes easier for similar claims to win in future. That is why they want us to fight each other. Alas, the enemy of justice and reparations is not the white man. It's us. Comment podcast to access my...
That's the Merc on YouTube. He be spilling it. He got some real spill for you. And I love the way that he went back to the point of everything that we've been, that I've kind of mentioned here, is that they want us to fight with each other. They want us to look at each other as the enemy and even our own brothers and sisters. It's amazing because you hear people, even when we talk about reparations, we can't even get past foundational Black. Like if you were Jamaican or you're not really from the United States as a Black man or woman, then maybe you shouldn't get reparations. And it's like, are you guys really studying slavery? Like, do you realize that the majority of people who were enslaved were not brought here to the United States? And that the majority of people who were enslaved and the majority of people here who exist now are in Brazil with dark skin who speak Spanish, but they dropped people off all over to different islands, to the Bahamas, all over. Like many of us came here to the United States, not the majority, but we were dropped off everywhere. And well, who cares where they're from? They were enslaved, and that matters. And what people did to other humans was wrong, and that does matter. And that needs to be the focus. We got to stop letting people propagandize the truth and lying to us and just putting things out there that are not true. And then we just focus on not the act of them being held accountable, but who deserves it. Now we beefing with each other about something we didn't create. Why are we in it? We shouldn't be in it to begin with. Shout out to TSA. Why were they in it? We didn't create it. In that situation, didn't I even think about how Haiti, like they really hated, I think there's a way to say it is Haiti. I'll just say it the way I know to say it with my colonized tongue. That Haiti won their independence was the first. They whooped France's ass as the Black man should have, and freed themselves from slavery and had to turn around and pay 150 gold francs, which in that time was close, roughly $40 million to the French because they had lost money. They had lost revenue because they didn't have slaves. They didn't have people to enslave. They didn't have people to work for free. So they literally, I don't know how that came to an agreement, but you see how Haiti's still suffering to this day for their strength, for the fact that they fought and won and beat the French. The French was getting their ass whooped by a lot of people. When I look at history, y'all weak. I'm tired of pants y'all be wearing. But anyway, so literally, even here in the United States, though once slavery ended, those who owned slaves or enslaved people were given reparations. They were literally paid for their losses. It started with insurance, but even after slavery, they paid them for their losses. Literally, the country, the leaders paid them. But here we are still fighting to get what's owed to our people. And we have people literally arguing about who should get it and who was responsible and who wasn't. And why does it matter? Because Africans did it. Like, y'all need to stop. Y'all need to stop. And just another way of just letting you know who y'all people are, because there was over 25 million people enslaved, okay? And 3 million of those people died in transit. Some people jumped off, some people just suffered and died, okay? Listen, we are deserving. Yeah, so that was really something interesting. But I was back to my point before we close out. I wanted to get this in. I had a lot of other things I wanted to get into. With that, we can get into next week. I want to talk about Target. And y'all, I got some breaking news about Target. Like, we think we boycotting because of DEI. It's some other stuff. They funding prison industrial complexes and all kind of stuff. We'll talk about it next week, next Saturday. But I wanted to close out highlighting the women's histories. And again, I talked about all the Black women that I big up. But the woman that I'm going to talk about today is not a Black woman. She's actually a white woman. And I want to just give her a plug because this is what I was talking about last week when I, was asking, can white women be, true advocates for Black people? And I said, under the conditions that they are willing to actively participate, actively engage themselves in the fight, and definitely be a part of it, like be committed, have a loyalty to the fight, and not try to change it in any way, but to be a part of it and know the risk could be their life. They would, that could be the risk. A lot of them aren't that. And so for those who are not, I would say, no, you cannot truly be an advocate for the Black woman. But for those who are, like Viola Luiso, I would say yes. And this woman, she was born in April of 2025, passed away in 1965, March 25th to be exact. So just a few days to commemorate her death. She was killed, but she started out being a white single. Well, she did get married. She had 5 kids. Long story short, she was a woman who came from a poor family. Her father lost his hand in a mining accident. Her mother had to use her teaching degree to work short-term jobs to take care of the family. From Tennessee to, I think they moved to another city, and then landed permanently in Detroit, Michigan. She got involved in NAACP. She eloped and got married at the age of 16, but that didn't last long. But she got married twice. Her first husband she had 2 kids with. The second she had 3 kids with. So she was 5. She had 5 kids, and she joined the NAACP after befriending a woman who would help her raise her kids by way of what we call nannies, but this was a Black woman who she spent a lot of time around. You spend a lot of time on a Black woman, you're going to turn into an advocate if you're a real one. And so this Black woman kind of got her into the whole advocate thing. And mind you, saying that she's a poor woman, she lived, adjacent to Black people who were living in poor communities, again, segregation and just all the oppression and everything that comes with it. So she had a taste of what it felt like to, she had a familiarity to the Black culture. So she wasn't, conditioned to think one way or the other. She had her own lived experiences being around Black people. And again, she had a Black woman who she befriended and she got involved in the NAACP, began to lead be in a membership role in NAACP, and started to fight to help Black people maintain their voting rights, because that was a big deal. And she did that by picking people up and taking them to vote, and literally the time of her demise, she was part of the Montgomery bus boycott movement. She traveled to march with people, and again, to help them get to it. And the Ku Klux Klan were already following her and knowing, how close she was wedded to this activism. And so by way of FBI, they had informants following her and watching her moves. And they followed her through this Montgomery bus boycott. And they had an informant that, kept a watch on her. But in the end, they ended up shooting up her car, the Ku Klux Klan, witnessing her in a car with a Black man. So they saw a white woman and a Black man and assassinated her. And so there's this big old story behind it, because at the time, the president of the United States, who was it? Was it Lyndon B. Johnson? Give me a moment to refresh my memory on who actually was the president. It was J. Edgar Hoover, of course. No, J. Edgar Hoover was actually over the FBI, but he did everything he could to bring shame to her name, because again, just like with the drug situation where we were bringing drugs in, the United States was bringing drugs in and dropping them off in Black communities, and then the mass incarceration thing took effect. They did not want to be held accountable. They just wanted to call Black people drug dealers and drug abusers. They did not want to be held accountable. The FBI did not want to be held accountable for their part in it. And so the same was with this situation when this woman died, helping to fight against voter suppression against Black people. When her car was shot up, she was hit twice in the head by bullets from the KKK. And so they slandered her name and did things of that sort to try to divert attention away from the informant who may have been a part of it. Some people were held accountable. I think the maximum amount of time one of the men received was maybe 10 years. So again, we've seen that. The white woman is, what do they say, disposable, and especially if she's in a position to try to help the black man and woman. So I just wanted to big up Viola Louiso again. She lived in Detroit for a minute, a mother of five, killed while assisting black people in trying to get voter rights, voting. The thing that a lot of people say doesn't matter, it don't count. Like in real life, they're really killing people over this. It's amazing. So let me big up Maya Angelou, and I want to shout out Eric Benet. If you guys don't know, he's a singer formerly married to Ali Berry. Uh, if that rings a bell, but I want to play his clip, and then I'm going to close out with Maya Angelou. So I just want to thank all of you who joined me in the chat and are watching later and may add to the conversation. Please feel free to do so on YouTube and Facebook. I appreciate you. But let me just play a little of Eric Benet as we celebrate and close out Women's History Month.
This idea, and I think it would be great if we make next week Follow a Black Woman Week on social media. I think that's a great idea. I'm specifically speaking to Mr. and Mrs. Non-Black America. Reason being is because Black women consistently vote for your best interest, Mr. and Mrs. Non-Black America. I mean, Black women disproportionately, the issues that are important for them are things like health care, maternal health care, expanding and securing the ACA, and holding officials accountable when they don't. Black women do this, and that benefits you, Mr. and Mrs. Non-Black America. Black women are also really focused on education, like funding public education, right? And making sure that education standards are at an acceptable level. And that benefits you, Mr. and Mrs. Non-Black America. And I mean, all of these things that are really the backbone of the stuff that keeps families thriving in America, when, let's face it, Mr. and Mrs. White America, y'all tend to vote against your best interest for whatever fucking ungodly reason. So I'm saying, how about you get to know a Black woman? Like, just randomly follow every day, next week, every day, follow a Black woman. Let's mingle in that algorithm, okay? Let's elevate expand our horizons so that maybe around midterms, you may have a whole nother perspective about what's good for you, because Black women are already on that. Okay, next week, by the power invested in me by Beyonce's internet, Eric Benet hereby decrees next week, every day, is follow a random Black woman, Mr. and Mrs. Non-Black America. I think it'll be good for the country. Black women is the backbone. Come on.
The backbone.
Hey,
the backbone. You heard them. Next week, y'all, follow a Black woman. That's for all of you non-melanated people who aren't. You should. You really, really should. And then I want to close out with this. Again, let me go ahead and get my applause in for those of you who engaged. I'm saying it with a side eye, but anyways. I just want to thank you all who do watch later. I still want to get my applause in for you guys. So let me just do that. And then we'll close out with Maya Angelou. So thank you so much. Appreciate y'all. And again, this is Maya Angelou, who has something to say in reference to we have to thank Black women, because Black women, we've nursed strangers. We've been here, we've done it, and yeah, we really should show our love and appreciation for the Black woman. So hear that.
There is a kind of strength that is almost frightening in Black women. It's as if a steel rod runs right through the head down to the feet. And I believe that we have to thank Black women not only for keeping the Black family alive, but the white family. Why is that? Because Black women have nursed a nation of strangers. For hundreds of years, they literally nursed babies at their breast who they knew when they grew up would rape their daughters and kill their sons. That's a fact. That's true. I know, but it's the truth, Bill. It's the truth.
It's the truth. When you see a Black woman, give her a hug. You know what I'm saying? Give her a nod, give her a wink, let her know you see her, because we out here fighting for everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. As always, it's all love and respect. Until next Saturday, enjoy, have fun, be nice, take deep breaths, and exhale slowly, and eat well. All right, I'm out. Peace.